Hey guys, it's Kevin in the Murphy guys. I'm reviewing this movie that I was very much kind of on the fence about, and that of course is Rampage. And what Rampage centers about, we center on the character of Davis Okoye, and he is this primatologist that has always had this really great bond with animals, but predominantly this albino gorilla named George, who basically, after partaking in this certain experiment, George starts to undergo a pretty big transformation. He suddenly is a lot quicker, he has this incredible strength, and it is definitely a much more dangerous than he was before, and Davis basically has to try to find, what really to do about this, and if there really is a cure to possibly stopping this. So Rampage in general, I was interested in this movie to say the least. I didn't really know much about this going into it. You guys know me, I'm not much of a gamer. I don't really play a lot of video games and things like that. So Rampage was not really a game that was on my radar before this, I have to say. But I figured, it has Dwayne Johnson, it looks like it knows what it is, and every time I saw the trailer, I just thought this is either going to be really dumb or really stupid fun. Like, that's really what it was going to be, and I'm happy to report that Rampage is actually a little bit of both. I do think that this film is simply just okay. It does have a lot of fun moments in there, but we're just getting into right now, starting off with the cast. And that is easily one of the best things about this movie. I think there are definitely some actors in here that are clearly having a lot of fun, particularly Dwayne Johnson as Davis Okoye. I mean, what is there to be said about this guy that hasn't been said already? He's one of the most charismatic and likable actors working in Hollywood, and even when he's in a role that really isn't working, he finds a way to make this role likable and for us to enjoy him in the role, and he once again does a really good job as his character. Davis is someone who actually is quite easy to identify with. He, is really upset about poaching, and he wants to do something to save these animals, and I did like his character in that sense. I think Johnson does do a good job here. You can tell he's having a lot of fun, and that's something I really love. He is very passionate about his roles, and you can definitely see that here, and Davis Okoye is really no different. It's very similar to many of the roles he's played before, but, Johnson just does such a great job in this role, and again, he's just so fun to watch that you really can't help but love every ounce of what he's doing here. He was a lot of fun. And then Naomie Harris in this film, while not nearly on the same level as Johnson, is still really good here. I mean, she's a great actress. This is the same actress that made me cry in Moonlight and things like that. And while she has nothing to that extent here, she does do a good job as the character of Condal. The character she's playing we'll get to a little bit later, but I did think she was good here. I thought her and Johnson did have a nice dynamic, and I thought they did work well overall. But going back to that category of someone who's just having so much damn fun, Jeffrey Dean Morgan in this movie, holy shit, was he fun to watch. I mean, a lot of people have said this, and I will agree. He's basically playing the nice version of Negan. Like, this is basically Negan, but if he wasn't the bad guy. Like, contrary to popular belief, he's not the bad guy in this movie. He is, much more likable, and he actually is more of an ally for them, and the character he's playing, again, we'll get to a little bit later, but he's just a lot of fun here. You can tell that he is just really enjoying what he's doing, and I thought he was definitely a lot of fun to watch. However, not everyone in this movie is very well casted, particularly Malin Åkerman, who I genuinely think is terrible in this movie. I mean, I've seen some performances from her, but this is easily the weakest stuff I have ever seen from Malin Åkerman. She's just playing your stereotypical sort of corporate, business woman who is only interested in money and doesn't give a shit about the animals. I mean, we've seen this character 1,000 times, but the way that Åkerman went about this felt like a soap opera at points. It honestly really did. There were things that she said, the way that she expressed herself, and I really did feel like I was watching a soap opera, and unfortunately the same is to be said for Jake Lacy, who is terrible in this movie. There are so many attempts at humor with his character, and it just falls so flat. These two are just awful in this movie, and it honestly did feel like they were part of a different movie. Like, there were points here where their acting is very different from someone like Johnson, Harris, and Morgan's acting. They feel very different than those three, and I thought overall, most of the cast was well done. It was just these two really were pretty bad here, I have to say. But now let's get to the directing and the writing, because that is something I was very interested in with this film. The trailers made it seem like this is a movie where they knew what it is, they didn't take it too seriously, and for the most part, that is the case. This movie is just really trying to have a lot of fun. It's not trying to win Oscars or anything like that, and I think that's one of the reasons why I will give this one a pass over some of the other really dumb video game movies we've had, because this one, it knows it's stupid, and it goes about it in a really dumb way, and I think they did a pretty good job with that. Anytime this movie tries to be really fun and just tries to have fun with itself, it actually exceeds at that pretty well. I did think they did a good job with that. There's a lot of really dumb sequences in here, but it's one of those movies where if you think about it for too long, it's not doing you any good. So go into this movie, if you're looking forward to it, just go into it knowing a lot of stuff is not going to make sense, and I do think they did a good job with that. That being said, however, the road to getting to the really awesome action where you're just seeing monsters fight each other and things like that is a bit rough, especially in terms of the dramatic moments. A lot of them do feel quite forced. I really did not think they worked very well. A lot of the attempts at humor, when it's not said by Johnson or Jeffrey Dean Morgan, really do not work. I thought a lot of the humor fell very flat, particularly, like I said, with Jake Lacy or these other characters that Johnson is associated with in the beginning of the movie. They really did not work for me either, and I really did not think the humor was working as well as it did. So yeah, the tone is a bit inconsistent for sure. There are points where it doesn't really feel like the movie knows what it wants to be, but when it tries to have fun with itself, it actually does a good job with that. Now let's get to the writing, because again, the writing, while the film is fun, the writing is definitely not one of their strong suits. There is a lot of problems when it comes to this movie. First of all, I'll get to the good stuff. Surprisingly, the best thing about this movie is actually the dynamic between George and Davis. Their dynamic actually does feel quite genuine. You get the sense that these two have been, together for a while. Davis has always really cared for George. They've always had this great rapport, and I just really enjoyed seeing it. It's a lot of fun to watch. George is someone who bounced off with Johnson quite well. I don't know who voiced George, but I thought they had really good chemistry, surprisingly, and I was actually really getting into their relationship at points. I did think they did a good job at fleshing their whole dynamic out. I was very surprised with that. I was not expecting to enjoy it as much as I did, but there actually is some good stuff there, and there is a good message about poaching and the dangers of what this can do and why this is hurting the environment. And it actually didn't feel as forced as I expected it to be, and that's mainly because the film doesn't touch upon it that much, and I did think they handled that quite well. Unfortunately, anyone that's not George or Davis are incredibly one-note, particularly Condal. To be honest with you, as much as I did enjoy Naomie Harris in this film, she really is just an expositional mouthpiece. That's really all she is in this movie. She does that, and she listens to Davis, and that's about it. There's not really much else to her character. I was happy that they didn't try to get into a relationship with these two. I thought that's where they were going to go, and they don't really do that until the very end of the movie. Then I thought they did ruin that a bit. But again, I really felt that she was quite lacking. And then Jeffrey Dean Morgan, like I said, the trailer makes it seem like he's the villain and that he's going to be the one that is against all these, albinos and things like that, when in reality, he's really just another ally. And despite the fact that Jeffrey Dean Morgan is so charismatic and is chewing up every single ounce of, what he's doing, chewing up all the scenery in this movie and stealing nearly every scene that he's in general, his character just feels a bit pointless, and when it really does come down to it, he just kind of feels like he's there to be like the Deus Ex Machina. Like, whenever there was a problem, he was always there to save the day. He always had some kind of solution, and it just felt very convenient. Like, if his character was cut out of the movie would feel a bit more real. But again, this isn't really a movie I go to be grounded in reality. But yeah, I mean, his character does feel a bit weightless, and I genuinely did not really see the point of him other than the fact that he's just there for plot reasons, and that's really it. But that is nothing compared to the other half of this movie. Like I said, everything going on with Malin Åkerman and Jake Lacy, I fucking hated these two. Everything going on within that plot, it's not interesting at all. I did not give a shit what was going on. They're doing like all this research about Codwell because she used to work with their project, and they're like obsessed with the genetic editing, and they want to use it for their own reasons, and they just want money from it. And I did not care about these characters, and the problem is we cut back to them so often and it's never interesting. Åkerman, like I said, is terrible in the movie, and I just did not care about that storyline at all. Also, the movie very wisely does make a choice to unceremoniously kill many characters in this film. Like I said in the beginning of the movie, Johnson is with this group of people in the beginning, and just to tell you guys, they're not in the movie that much, and I was very surprised about that, and the movie never mentions them again. It's very strange. It almost felt like they wanted this certain group of people in the movie, but then they couldn't be there, so they had to find a way to get them out of there, and it was just a very weird choice overall. There's an incredibly unintentionally funny scene involving these soldiers and this wolf, and it's probably one of the most unintentionally funny things I've seen in a while, to be honest with you. But other than that, like I said, the script, it's very messy. There's a lot of things that don't make sense, and it is kind of boring at times, especially when we cut to Malin, Åkerman, and Jake Lacy. I thought definitely that was very boring. The cinematography here, it's fine. It's not amazing or anything like that, but again, it knows what it is, and it's not amazing, but I will say that I don't think the CGI is as bad as it could have been, but that's just saying that it's just decent. Like, it's not amazing or anything like that, but it is better than it could have been overall. The score is whatever. The editing, like I said, the first two acts of this movie I did think did drag quite a lot, but the third act, that's really when things get interesting. That's really when this movie becomes a lot of fun, and it becomes exactly what you want it to be. However, that being said, this movie is very similar to Monster Trucks in that it has a disturbing lack of care and just any sort of, just any sort of respect when it comes to the dozen civilians that are killed. This is never brought up again. This is just something that kind of happens, and in a movie that's so fun, in a movie that was just so ridiculous, I didn't really care that much, but I can see why that might be a problem for people. Overall, guys, Rampage, it's a fun time. I think, there is enough stuff in there to enjoy. It's nothing I'm going to revisit again as a whole. It's got some really fun performances from Dwayne Johnson and Jeffrey Dean Morgan, but other than that, there's really not much else to this movie. There's a lot of stuff here that is definitely very hard to get through at points, but there are definitely a lot of fun moments that I did enjoy overall. And I am going to give Rampage overall a C.